We'll give it a minute or two before we start, just to let people join. Okay. Should we start? Are we ready to go? Hi everyone. Welcome to ESSEC Business School Future CMO Show. Thank you for joining. So for those of you who are new in this series, we're interviewing and we are speaking with top marketing leaders across Asia Pacific to learn a bit more about their career journey, the industry trends, and personal stories. So with me on this panel, I have Yankai. I don't know, Yankai, if you want to say a few words to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, so I'm Yankai. So actually I'm based in strategy and business consulting at Bayer, located in Shanghai. So very welcome all of you to join this session. So me and Marie, we graduate from MMD program. So I graduated from 2018. So maybe Marie, you can take a few minutes to introduce yourself.
Yes, so we're both alumni. Yankai, I just learned that she was actually an OG because she was part of the first batch that started in 2017. I graduated I started in 2020. Right now, I work at Amazon. I work at L'Oréal Canada as an Amazon analyst. It's 6 a.m. currently, so I'll do my best to make sense. And in this episode, we'll be answering the question, what does it take to become a CMO? So to answer this question, we are very lucky to have our special guest here with us, Mei Lee, who's partner at BCG. So thank you so much for joining us, Mei Lee. We're really excited to get to know you. And before we begin, I just want to say we'll have an allocated time for question. So feel free to write them in the chat as we go along. And then at the end, there'll be time made for that, for us to chat. So I think we can kick off today's conversation. Mei Lee, I think we want to get to know you. I did stalk your LinkedIn profile a little bit, and you have a very diverse career path. You started in marketing, and now you're in consulting. So can you tell us a bit more, about your career journey and how you went from marketing to consulting?
Great. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here and, getting to know the audience as well. So a quick introduction about myself and kind of a bit about my life story. So I was born in China and my family immigrated to the US when I was 9. And I grew up pretty much in the United States and, went to college there. And my first job was in Los Angeles. So I was trained in traditional marketing because I'm quite old, older than most of you. When I went to school, this was like when I graduated, it was like in 2003. So kind of do the math, right? And it was the world of the internet has not existed back then. And I major in marketing, so that your consumer research, branding, sentiments, etc. But when I graduated, I actually started my first job in digital media, and the path there was basically I did 5 internships when I was in college, and also being the youngest person in the marketing department. When there's anything that has to do with online, they always ask me to just like figure it out. So so it's really an accidental journey, to be honest, how I got into digital and started my career in online marketing. And back then, Facebook didn't even exist and Google just getting started. So this is kind of, a really early days of the internet. And what happened was I started my career in online marketing. 1 year into my career, I realized that I have a scholarship that was expiring if I don't utilize it. This is the Bill and Melinda Gates Scholarship that would fund me until PhD if I wanted to pursue academia. and I did want the scholarship to expire. So I actually went and applied for a master's program in application development and major in 6 different programming languages. Because back then, as a marketer, I thought, well, this thing called the internet is going to take off. And if I want to be the best marketer in the world, I want to understand how technology works and what happens, on the front end and the back end. And so that was the perspective. And I finished my master's in application development, and that pivoted me into an engineering role. So I was hired by the Walt Disney Company doing engineering, managing the search algorithm of Disney.com for 3.5 years. And I realized I really missed marketing. So I went back into marketing, and fast forward, I am currently at BCG, which is a consulting firm. I'm based in Singapore. I'm a partner there, focusing on helping our clients with marketing strategy, mainly e-commerce, media, advertising across Asia Pacific. And I also work on some global projects as well. So that's kind of a quick snapshot of the career journey. And I'm happy to answer questions or go into more details later.
Thanks a lot for your sharing. So seeing that your rich experience and diversity in the different industries and also a lot of backgrounds. So maybe our students wants to know what are the current challenges, also the market trends that you see in marketing and consulting. So maybe you can introduce more and let us know.
Yep. So I think for, so my career journey, I would say it's quite unconventional, because most folks who have been a marketer typically end up, being in a CMO position as the highest aspiration, right? And for me, that was my aspiration for the longest time. But then I realized that, why be a CMO of one company when I could actually join consulting and advise CMOs and drive marketing transformations and impact across multiple companies, multiple sectors, multiple geographies. And for me, there's also this personality where I like to work on many, many things. I get easily bored and complacent if I only work on one thing. So consulting in that sense is really suitable for me, because I get to apply my experiences and learn from multiple industries, multiple sectors, and multiple consumer segments as well. I think to kind of answer the question of, what's coming in marketing, right? If we think about marketing, I assume most of you grew up with the digital devices, the screens. A lot of you probably don't even know what MySpace or Friendster platforms are. They were like sort of the godfather of social media. I think if you think about marketing is no longer isolated. And the future of marketing, it will be multi-touch point, multi-channel, and borderless. Because with digital being the leading the frontier of marketing, it really breaks down all sorts of borders. And you also get a lot of actionable metrics real time for you to actually make better marketing decisions. So marketing has been really disrupted by technology, and now with AI coming, there's going to be another way of disruption. And I think what's interesting, from a career perspective, is really not just understanding what's trending, but understanding how can you actually apply all these changes that are happening in marketing for companies that are not yet have gone through this transformation, right? Because most companies are still behind in terms of their digital maturity. And and if you are focusing on having a marketing career, it's really important to think about the application of marketing, leveraging all the trends, all the technologies, all the insights, but in in companies that are still behind what's happening. And also in emerging markets like Southeast Asia, right? A lot of the trends are actually coming out of Southeast Asia and setting the standard for global adoption, which is something that you would never see 20 years ago, because most trends actually happen in the US and then it spreads, right? Spread across geography.
Okay. Thank you for your insights. I think it's true. Like we've been I mean, we're all a witness of how much the technology have accelerated this past few years, and especially like now recently with AI or even virtual reality. It's really up to like the companies to be able to pick up on this and invest now to be ready for the bigger waves later. You did touch upon like a bit of the differences between being able to work in consulting versus, marketing. You mentioned like being able to work on different projects and guide different CMOs from different industries. Would you mind sharing a bit more, how does applying, for example, innovation or creativity in a pure marketing role like differs from like applying them in a consulting one? Like what are the differences and similarities?
That's a really good question. I think when you are a CMO or the marketing head of a company, you tend to look at things from within, right, in terms of your perspective. And so a lot of the marketing orchestrations are focused on how to solve problems or achieve objectives from sort of like a from within kind of perspective. In consulting, a lot of the marketing problems are defined by the clients, right? They come to us and say, this is where we need BCG's help. We can't crack it on our own, and we need more than just our own perspective and our own expertise. And sometimes in a company, even a CMO cannot fully understand or solve the problems that exist. So they need outside consultancy or advisor to come in. And I think the biggest difference is that when, working in consulting, I get to see a lot of different narratives and lots of different strategies and a lot of different data points across the same problem. And that makes me as a marketer, as a consultant, more effective, because I'm able to solve the same problem like 5 different ways, instead of being let's say a marketer in a company or a CMO in a company. You only probably are given a chance to solve the problem in one way, right? And sometimes that may not be the best way.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for your sharing. So I think you mentioned also the marketing roles playing the consulting. Also, what does it mean for the different industries? So interestingly, also to see how is your experience and what is the most challenging project you are facing, or in consulting or in your past experience. Maybe can inspire our students to how to progress and how to adapt their future in their career.
Yeah. I love the question as well. So for me, right, what's interesting is that I spent about 20 years working on the client side, or what we call the industry side. So I work for media companies, I work for retailers, I work for publishers, I work for agencies, and I work for marketplaces like Lazada. And I have always have a functional role, always having responsibilities overseeing either marketing or digital or e-commerce or media or CRM, etc. And these experiences have really made me a specialist in many ways across the different dimensions of marketing. And typically, when you look at a career path like that, the natural step is move towards, a CMO role or a general management type of role, right? But the interesting thing that has happened in consulting in the last, I would say 5 to 6 years, especially in Southeast Asia, is that there is a recognition and an appreciation for industry expertise. And they have created a career track called the expert track, where they hire people with experience from the different industries, such as retail, marketplace, e-commerce, energy, manufacturing, you name it, right? It doesn't have to be marketing, but they basically have created an expert track where they bring in people with significant experience in a particular topic into the consulting workforce. And BCG has a similar program, and it's essentially for them to. So I'm a part of the lateral hire under the expert track to come in and work with work with our clients and deepen the expertise, because I have done execution, I have been on the other side. So combine that with the classical consulting expertise and strategy focused approach of BCG, where majority of our associates and consultants are hired either from MBA or right out of college, right? And then they progress through the career ladder at BCG and eventually make it to managing directors and partner. So that path is, you don't start with a skill set. You basically are generalists, right? And then at some point in your career, you may say, I want to develop myself as an expert in these topics. Versus for me, the track that I'm part of is actually I bring the expertise and then I'm learning how to apply it in a broader context within consulting. So if you're thinking about, your career path, these days, there's really no right or wrong career path. I definitely did not design my career path and expect it to turn out this way 20 years ago. I think that for me, each role and each time I said yes to a job, each time I quit a job, I have been really intentional about it because I'm clear about what I want from each of these jobs, and together they have built up my skill set, built up this career that enable me to be in the position that I'm in today. So I think being really thoughtful about what interests you, what actually excites you, and what you think you want to learn and be challenged, and let your heart guide you. I think it's probably the best advice I could give anybody, because that's what has worked for me like all this 20 years.
Thank you. I like what you said, because it's kind of the questions that I'm asking myself right now. Like, if I want to do more of it, like at L'Oreal, we call this the flower strategy. So touch a bit of everything and become like a general, being able to access the general manager like position, or become like an expert in a specific domain. And these are completely two different career journey. As you said, there's no wrong and right. It's just like a matter of what you want to do and what interests you. So I'm currently like asking myself those questions. I was wondering as well, like, how do you approach like problem solving and decision making, and now as a consultant versus a marketer before?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think the way I look at problems and the way I think about solutions have definitely changed for the better after I joined consulting, just because I have been exposed to how, the BCG way of thinking and how consulting actually solves almost sometimes impossible challenges. So I think one example, right? In marketing, when you have to solve for a problem, you usually have to think about the consumer, and you think really channel level. So when you're solving a marketing problem, you're trying to figure out like, okay, am I like, is this happening in online, or is it happening offline? And what am I trying to solve for, right? So it's really channel level. It's really more narrow in terms of the problem set. I think in consulting, the approach to problem solving is a lot more holistic, a lot more broad. And on top of it, there are a lot of scenario planning that happens to, you first of all, you frame the problem really differently. Usually you frame the problem beyond what the problem is, and you go a few more layers on the why. And then you think through a lot more about, is this a problem that is about where to play, or is this a problem about what to prioritize? So you first isolate the type of problem you're solving first before you just jump in to solve it. So I would say it's a lot more elevated thinking, and it's a broader perspective when you look at the problem statement. And then the solution sets are also a lot more holistic, because you think through the trade-offs before you actually define the solution sets. So I would say it's a lot more systematic, versus marketing, you kind of trying to, like fight fires, and it's whatever your boss thinks you need to strive for. So you don't solve, or you're not given the opportunity to solve problems in a more holistic way. Yeah.
Fully agree. So this echoing back to the project that currently I'm doing. So also we starting from the strategic point of view, and then we also see what are their brand positioning and also the marketing issues, right? So actually, we see a lot of the reports from marketing companies, for example, Kantar, they start from a consumer point of view. So what's my brand positioning? But then also building on business point of view. So actually, it's an input for your decision to judge how I move for my brands, right? So it's also related to more complicated dimensions for them go to market and also for your channels, those things that compose to the roles, right? So I think I fully agree, and also I think it's quite interesting.
Definitely.
So maybe that links to my next question is what do you see your roles like in marketing company or in the marketing expertise, and what's the roles in consulting team? So like how do you see the skill set, and also how do you see the collaborations differently in the different like domains?
Yeah, I would say probably it's not a fair comparison to compare marketing versus consulting because they're really different roles. But if I think about, you know, the role of a marketer, the role of a CMO, and how it will evolve in the future, and you know, regardless of context, right, whether it's in consulting or a brand, I think that there's a lot of uncertainty about what is the future of a CMO and how that's going to evolve, because for a period of time, the CDO roles, which stands for Chief Digital Officers, that was the big thing, and there were lots of debates that CMO roles are actually becoming obsolete. It's evolving to be a CDO because everything is now digital, and CMOs are kind of perceived as more traditional, and they are not they can't keep up with the digital channels, and they don't know how to do marketing with digital in the center. And as we see, like now CDOs roles are actually diminishing, and CMO roles are actually coming back in a integrated way between traditional and digital. So I think if you think about CMO roles or the top, being the top marketing person in a company or for a brand, the role will always be about how do you actually define and protect the brand purpose, and how do you actually leverage the technology, your resources, your budgets, and your the channels that are available to reach the right customers at the right time with the right message, with the right product, without wastage, right? And to do so in a way that actually sustains the brand over a long period of time. So I think the essence of marketing and what the CMO has to deliver will always remain, but what will change is the application and the collaboration with the technology, with data, AI, and also expectations of the new generation coming into the workforce, right? It's impossible to think that we need to all stay in the office every single day for at least 8 hours a day, right? So how do you actually lead a marketing organization in a cohesive way with a remote team or this new generational way of working, right? So there are new issues for CMO to tackle, for sure, taking into consideration all the changes that are happening and will happen in the future. I think in consulting, regardless of what level you come in at, I think the role of advising CMOs or marketing teams will be, we have to be one step ahead, if not several steps ahead. So it's about not just knowing what trends are actually happening and how brands need to get on the train now, otherwise we'll be left behind, but it's also about how do you actually drive digital transformation that will benefit marketing? How do you drive the change management process? How do you upskill? For example, I'm working with a CPG company, one of the biggest CPG companies, and our program has upskilled 300 marketers for them around the world globally. And so it's about getting the leadership to actually commit to investing in their people, especially the marketing teams, in organizations that are one of the biggest brands in the world, and then letting them actually continuously improve and upskill so that they don't fall behind, right? So I think in consulting, I and my colleagues get a chance to drive this type of impact at scale, which is really exciting and rewarding, which you don't typically, you wouldn't do this in a traditional marketing role, regardless of industry.
When you said that the program upskilled, are you talking about the expert program at BCG that you were mentioning earlier?
No, I'm talking about BCG was brought in to upskill the brand's 300 plus marketers who work for the brand globally.
Okay.
So on the client side.
Oh, on the client side. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I think it's interesting, like as well, the definition that you gave of a CMO and how like its mission, like its end goal remains the same throughout time. What changes is like its application and being able to adapt to nowadays technology or digital world. And I think the MMD masters at ESSEC is like the proof of how we're adapting now, even as students, to be able maybe to become the future CMOs. Who knows?
Yes.
I was wondering if you could as well like expand a bit more. You touched upon how technology is impacting you and how you need to adapt now as a consulting company and being like 3 steps ahead. Can you expand a bit more on how technology is changing how we market and consult clients?
Yeah. So I think for me, right, when I started my career, I technology was not in the heart of everything that I needed to do. Because back then there was almost no tech in marketing, or really little tech, right? Everything was like manual, and you didn't really need to like be good on the technical side to be a good marketer. But as time evolves, now marketing is quite technical. We're not talking about just SEO. We're talking about data science. We're talking about mark tech. We're talking about ads, ad tracking and ad serving, right? And for a period of time, I really challenged myself and gave myself a lot of pressure to actually trying to be like the master of like all these topics, because I thought like, oh, if I master all of them, I'll be a better marketer. And it got to a really overwhelming point, because I realized that I can't be a master in all these different topics, and more will come as the industry develop. So I think if you can kind of decide of all the marketing topics out there, right, you probably at most can master only half, right? So which half do you want to master and learn, and how will you supplement yourself with the others? So when it comes to technology, that's why kind of linking back to, I went back and got my master's in application development. I thought like technology, I need to know technology equally well as marketing in order to be good. And I think that has helped my career for 10 years until the technology that I learned became obsolete, right? So I think at every stage of like the career ladder, and regardless of like how senior you are, you always have to know when your knowledge will expire and when it's time to actually learn something new. And that should be a lifelong continuous pursuit when you're in marketing. And technology today is not just about knowing how to code. That was back then. That was my idea of like, I need to be good at technology. Now I think to be a really successful marketer, you need to understand enough about technology, but what's and how it works. But I think the most powerful thing you can do is actually knowing how to apply technology. You can find all the geeks and nerds in the world to kind of like figure out all the different technologies that you need, and you can pay vendors to bring in those capabilities, right, to anchor your marketing. But if you don't know how everything works together and what you're actually building and how technology fits into your marketing puzzle, you're going to orchestrate a marketing Frankenstein, and you will you will have like so many different martech platforms, and you have like 10 different metrics telling you what like the same different stories, and you will be so confused and you don't know what to believe, right? So it's about the power of technology. I think going into the future, for marketers is really around the application and the context.
Thanks for your sharing. I think it's quite interesting. So actually, you mentioned that the soft skill and also the hard skills that requires or building up your capabilities, and also mentioned that what will change and impact on the industries. And from your perspectives, how do you see this trend in the future that will impact on the no matter CPG company or manufacturer companies? Because we see ChatGPT, those is very the hot topics around the world, right? And also like a lot of my friends, they are have their startups and they're using the ChatGPT to write the marketing word for them. So just very simple examples. So would you see that it's also a change or impact that will bring to the companies to consider?
Yeah, so I think there are lots of different debates and schools of thoughts, right, on how all this is going to impact the future. I think one perspective that I personally use and that you guys can also consider is, if you think about the future, you are, if you're thinking about what's happening today and how it is being used, you're already behind, because the future, that's not going to be the future, because it's the present, right? So when we try to understand like sort of like the evolution of technology and where everything is going, you need to think about your children. And I know, like, some of you may be still single or not yet married and not yet have children, all that. But imagine, and let's just hypothesis, right? Let's just imagine you guys all have children someday. The world that you need to market to and you need to like think about, and the skill set that you need to gain now is what are your children going to be exposed to, right? In the future, what are the technologies, what are the behaviors, what are the attitudes, and how will they actually interact with brands, and how will they consume? Like, these are the questions that you need to find answers and trying to understand today to understand where the future is going. And for me, I tend to not like share too much like predictions, because for me, I look at data to help inform me what's happening. And that serves as sort of like the guide for where the future could be going. So for me, I think the best advice on this is really think about the next generation and think about what they will be, what kind of consumers will they be, and what type of marketing will be necessary to connect with your next generation consumers, which will be your kids and your grandkids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what you just said kind of relates to what you said earlier. Like, you need to always think like 3 steps ahead. So the technology that we have now, like, how do you apply it in future generation? Like, just to discuss a bit about like the skills that you need to develop to become a successful CMO. So from what I've gathered from our conversation so far, it was from what I've gathered, it was being able to think like steps ahead, and project like the technology that you have now, or the digital sphere that you have now. How do you apply it in a few years? And then being able to prepare yourself for that transition. So being curious and continue to learn to be able to apply this in future roles and future tasks. You also mentioned data, like, because you just mentioned that you're data driven, so you look at data. Any other soft and hard skills that you have in mind to become a successful CMO, if you were to give some advice to us?
Yeah, so I think in terms of soft skills, the number one soft skill I would promote and advocate for is communication. Because if you're going to be the top marketer or a CMO of the future, you need to be able to articulate well. And I'm not just saying like you articulate your own thoughts well. That's like table stake. I'm talking about, articulating the brand, articulating the mission, and also, being able to actually have influence and persuasion, right? All these are communication soft skills that unfortunately our schooling doesn't focus enough on. And I think this is the number one soft skill that needs to that you need to win as a CMO. In terms of hard skills, the I've been on this journey where I used to think that, oh, if I'm technical, then I will be more, marketable. I can find jobs where I can get paid more. And then it evolved to, if I'm more data driven and I'm analytical, let me put all these buzzwords on my LinkedIn, on my resume, then I'll get noticed more, right? And then it evolved to be like, oh, the buzzwords now is digital transformation, change management, right? Because all these companies were kind of going through, these traditional companies were going, they're just lost and they don't know how to transition to the digital era. So then for a while that worked out really well for me. So I have tried them all. And I would say, if you ask me, like, going into the future, what are the hard skills and keywords that will be critical? I would say it will be technology. Position yourself as someone who is a technology-led marketer that is data driven, but also strategically focused, because you can get lost in, you can have the best data in the world, but if you analyze it and take too long to absorb the data, you will lose speed on execution, and that could be a pitfall, right? But if you're too focused on technology, then you may actually lose the strategic value of what you're trying to do. So I think the hard skills is train your strategic mind to be more critical in the way you evaluate problems and in how you actually come up with solutions. And then definitely lean on technology to solve a lot of the problems that will come up in marketing, and do it in a scalable way. I would say these are some of the hard skills, and a lot of it links to the way you think and critical thinking.
Fully agree. I think that also echoes back to my experience. So I started from my engineering chemical, and then I went to ESSEC MMD school to improve my communication skills, which I found is quite helpful for me to develop my career also in consulting. So which I think you mentioned the soft skill is very important, and also for hard skills. That also what I see in my past clients. They're facing this kind of critical issues that they cannot solve. For example, they have the data, but they don't know how to strategically use the data, or they use the data, but they don't know how to perform or operation to use that. So I think that's very important for us. And then thinking for our students and also for the perspective, the young generations, how do you advise for them to develop themselves in this area? Or how do they see they can improve in their consulting or want to be a marketing role?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I would say, one more thing to build on this is that when you are thinking about if your aspiration is to be a marketer or a CMO, you cannot just think about being a CMO. You have to also train yourself to have the skill sets of a lawyer, the skill sets of an engineer, the skill set of an accountant. And that will help get you there faster, and it will make you a more effective CMO. Because if you train yourself to think like a accountant and develop those hard skills, you will be really good at the numbers, right? You will be really good at driving business impact and commercial results, which is critical nowadays when marketing is all performance focused. Second is think like a lawyer, persuasion, influence. How are you going to convince your 60-year-old CEO that TikTok is where we should have a digital presence, right? So being able to actually persuade and have like sound argument that are logical, which what lawyers do really well. It's really important as a CMO, right? And then lastly is the engineers, right? How do you train yourself to think like an engineer where it's systematic? There are never wrong answers in programming. But if you have the wrong answer, if you program any piece of your code incorrectly, the program will not run. And I spent hours debugging and trying to fix my code so that the program actually runs. So there's always, it's zeros and ones, it's black and white, right? So how do you actually structure your mind to think, with clarity, with precision, and with impact and in a really systematic way so that you are, be efficient and you're being optimal. So I would say, as I was developing my career, these were the cast of characters, my imaginary friends, imaginary personas I was building for myself so that I can actually be a multi-dimensional marketer.
Thank you so much, Mei Lee. I will keep the league, like being a lawyer, in the back of my head. Like I never thought of it this way, but it makes sense given the fact that you cited communication as one of the priority skill to have. I think these were all like very valuable advices for our students who joined us today. I think I'm being mindful of the time. I think we can maybe open the floor now to questions from the audience. I don't know if there's anything in the chat. All right, I'm seeing a first question here. Maybe I'll read it out loud. On the rise of data, do you see the future marketers needing to be able to do analytics, or would data capabilities be delegated to a specific functional silo, working cross-functionally with marketing?
Okay, yes. So great question. So the answer is yes. If you think about, why digital marketing is so powerful, it is because every click, every interaction can be tracked and measured. So having analytical skills, analytics intelligence, it's really important. Now, you don't have to be the expert in analytics, but you need to have analytics literacy. You need to be able to guide your teams, to lead them to understand out of like the 50 metrics that are in front of you, which one actually will matter, which two are levers to drive incremental impact to the business, right? So you need to be able to have enough literacy with analytics to be able to at least converse and collaborate and direct your teams in this manner. So hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, I think you did.
Now I'll choose a question from my side. So I think this is quite interesting. So the students asking, can you share example of similar projects you worked in BCG and the outcome to achieve? So the student wants to have maybe an example that would be very sufficient. Yeah.
Okay, so I can share two quick examples because I think they're different, they'll resonate differently. So last year I led a project on the future of commerce, and this is a public publication, public thought leadership piece with TikTok. Usually we cannot name our clients, but this one was actually published. So if you just Google Shoppertainment BCG, you will be able to read the publication. And I'm one of the co-authors. And this was one of my first projects when I went into consulting. So this project was interesting because the client came to us and say, we want to establish thought leadership on the future of commerce. How do you even think about, what is the future for shopping and consumers? And so we actually have to also do market sizing on the opportunity of shoppertainment, which is really, sort of like this new way of engaging with products and brands and shopping. It's not a, discounts in your face, but actually let me delight, entertain you before I actually sell to you, right? So it's a paradigm shift in terms of how marketing and commerce intersect. And I think this was a really interesting project for me because when you have a question like what is the future of commerce, and you actually have to back it with consumer insights, with proof points, with market sizing, and having to do that in 8 weeks, it's quite challenging. So so that's the kind of work that I get to do and lose sleep on. Super exciting and rewarding. Another project is about myopia management. So I think that the reality is that half of the world will be myopic, meaning they need glasses or they need contacts. They cannot see far distance. And in some Asian countries, it's already surpassed the 50%, 80% of the the markets of the country, right? In children especially. So everyone is basically losing their eyesight because we're staring at our phones too much and we're watching too much Netflix, YouTube, and TikTok videos, right? And we're not spending enough time outdoors. So all these are causes for, you know, people having bad eyesight globally. So one of the projects that I was tasked with is figuring out, you know, for a healthcare company, how can we actually be one of the market leaders in this part of the world, and how do we penetrate into, you know, the different countries when the competition has already established themselves there, you know, like many years ago, right? And they don't even have the right product range, and they don't even have, you know, the strategy figure out yet. So this was a strategy project in terms of figuring out, you know, what's the opportunity, what's the go-to market, what are the strategic options available to enter and be the top player in a market that they don't exist yet. So that's another, I would say, type of project or interesting project that I worked on.
Super interesting, very diverse and very different as well, the examples that you gave. I had no idea that we were going blind. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Another question from the audience. What advice would you give someone who hasn't decided which career path to pursue?
Yes, love this question. And I think that all of us at some point are lost in terms of a career path. Even at times, I'm personally asking myself, is this the career path that I want to continue, right? I've been doing the same thing or similar things for 20 years. It's a time to do something different, right? And when I was in engineering, I got out of engineering because I felt like I worry that, oh, well, once I have a family, it might be too stressful to constantly have to keep up with technology and the different types of programming. And I may not ever move high enough on that career path. So I probably should just leave and go back to marketing, right? So like, I think it's okay to not know. And you may, you know, for some people, it may take a long time to figure out, and it's okay to be constantly figuring it out. So I just want to like let you acknowledge that, because it's not like you have a problem. I sometimes still am lost if I'm doing the right thing. So it's I think if you're trying to get more clarity, I think the traditional tactics of talking to people who are on career paths that you aspire to, I think that's helpful. What I did when I was started out in my career, I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn. I literally look up companies and roles of people who are, you know, maybe 5 steps ahead of me, and I look at how they describe themselves, the career track, the career journey that they have been on, how long they stay within each job, and how one job, you know, is different from the current job. So I spend a lot of time just kind of using LinkedIn to do like career identification mapping, so that it gives me some kind of clarity on the different pathways I could also pursue. The other thing is, of course, consulting. Consulting is an amazing holding place if you're lost, if you're experimenting, or if you're just, you know, wanting to figure out later. And that's, you know, because you're given the opportunity to do so many different things, and you will know what you like and what you don't like for sure. If you're on something if you're forced to be on something for like 2 months, at least like 15 hours a day, sometimes you will know that if you really know if you like it or not. So it's a good place to figure out yourself as well, and how, you know, whether you want to go deeper or you want to stay away from it for like the next 10 years.
I can't agree more, because I also have very hard time and tough time with my clients saying I made that. So I'm hesitating if my career choice is right. But I think looking, just also echoing so what you comment, you see the LinkedIn also. I think my experience observing what my clients are doing, it's also a very good journey for you to decide where you can choose. So I think
Yes.
For students, to summary, so maybe more observation, more trials. So I think it can be very good development, and also a lot of how to say, you know, just as what you said, you know what you want to do or don't want to do.
Yeah.
And I see a very interesting question here. have read that FMCG companies are lagging behind other industries when it comes to e-commerce. What do you think their challenge are their challenges they are facing? So I choose this question because I also had one client experience facing the same issues. Because in China, a lot of the small brands are popping up, and then actually a lot of the MNC brands are losing their market shares because of the digital commerce. And we know that the brand on Taobao and Tmall, they can actually graduate very fastly, so eat their market share. So I think this question is also interesting for me as well.
Yep. It's a good question. So there are lots of key challenges these companies face, right? But if you step back on what's actually happening, it's really the operating model. So FMCG companies typically are, built and set up with a traditional route to market and an operating model. So they are brick and mortar business. They are channel channel trade marketing, and they are set up to essentially drive the business that way, right? Versus a digital business it's a different type of go to market, different type of operating model. So and if you think about the percentage of e-commerce as total revenue for these FMCG companies in Southeast Asia, we have not crossed the 10% mark. So meaning majority of our FMCG companies that we know, global ones, they are still making 90% of their revenue from offline channels and only at max 10% from online, right? And and we have seen this like accelerated path and growth where FMCG companies are actually investing heavily in e-commerce and digital infrastructure, and we have seen a lot of growth in the sector where e-commerce business is actually growing at least 2 or 3 times faster than their traditional business. But in terms of total share, it's still the baby, right? So the challenge here is, really about prioritization. If you're the boss of the FMCG company and, at least 80% of the revenue is coming from offline, are you going to spend more time on the offline business or e-commerce business, right? The answer is they are spending time on both. But in terms of, the big bets and the resources, it's still going to be the offline space. But I definitely see that a lot of the changes are already happening in the last 5 years in Southeast Asia. A lot of FMCG companies are actually changing their business operating model, upskilling their teams, hiring profiles that they have never hired before into their marketing teams to really upskill the entire organization. So a lot of changes are happening, but it takes time, and that's the key challenge. It will take time for us to get there and for this to actually kind of balance itself out.
Yeah, I think I'm totally aligned with what you say because I work in like mass cosmetics.
Yes.
And right now our priority, of course, is focusing on how we grow like our e-commerce or e-retail channels, but like the reality is that the majority of our sales is still coming from bricks and mortars, so we can just not like jump ship and focus solely on digital channel when like our weight of business doesn't reflect those strategies. So I don't think we can talk of a complete channel shift right now, but like you said, we focus on both, but like a lot of energy is still focused on bricks and mortar for that reason.
Yeah. Great.
Another question from the audience, from Nikita. Things that we mentioned during our talk. What do you think is the future of marketing with metaverse, Web 3.0, AI being the hot topics and changing how things are being done today? And additionally, how do you think the marketing management digital students can leverage this aspect while looking for jobs or just generally upskilling?
Yeah. So the metaverse, I have no idea. Sometimes I see all these trends coming in, and it has happened multiple times, right? A trend will come in. I purposely don't participate in learning about it because I personally am not sure or don't believe in it. And then a few years later, it dies down. And then I didn't waste time, right? I feel like, okay, that was the a good choice, right? It's just like in the US, right? When I was working in the US as a marketer, there was a short period when everybody think that QR code is the future, and nobody believed in it. So then it died down. But then coming to Asia, QR codes are everywhere. It's sort of like, you know, part of the entire consumer journey. You use a QR code for everything, and it's normal. Consumers actually embrace it. But in the US, it's completely opposite. But now, you know, like at least 15 years later, QR codes are actually becoming a bigger thing in the US, right? So it's hard to predict what will happen and what consumers will actually participate in when these kind of technology and trends take off. But I think one thing for sure is that I have seen, you know, machine learning, AI technology being actually used to help make marketing more automated and more scalable. And so if the question is about, well, if that's the case, how can I actually be at the forefront of this in terms of my skill set? Then my answer would be spend time understanding how this technology works from a concept perspective, from a theory perspective, and then find opportunities to actually re-up on cases, right? From brands who are actually leveraging it. Unfortunately, it's still a new topic. Not a whole lot is out there yet compared to other more advanced topics. But I think the more you can understand the advancement in AI, and also, you know, how brands are actually experimenting with metaverse and Web 3.0, then you can stay informed. Then I think that's the best you can do right now. I personally don't invest more time on these topics beyond this.
Good. Do we have time for one more question? Or I think we unfortunately, I think have to close this session.
Yes.
Because we're almost out of time. But thank you so much, Mei Lee, for joining. It was a pleasure, you know, getting to know you and hearing a bit more about your experience. For those of you on the call who are interested in learning from top marketing leaders across Asia Pacific, to learn more about the career journey, industry trends, and personal stories like we just did right now, you can check our next Future CMO show.
And also for those interested to discover what takes to us, so I think you are very welcome to contact our ESSEC colleagues. They will share more about the ESSEC programs and also the MMD programs.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Mei Lee.
Hope you enjoyed today's session.
Yes.